think there's, obviously the more ways that we can reach kids and get kids to the same rigorous end of high school place, that's terrific. We frankly have done a lot of looking out there and haven't seen, we've seen interesting career tech programs, there's no question about it, that look like they are very rigorous. What we haven't seen are sort of those, and I know folks are working on it now, the sort of integrated classes where you get both, there are a few examples here and there, where you get geometry and construction together, where you get kind of that high-level coursework, so you can be sure that that rigorous, you've got the rigorous content and you've got some really interesting application, which frankly, makes it sort of come alive for lots of kids. So that would be great. That I think is a little bit the holy grail in this area. It's something I think there are lots of folks out there working on that we aspire to, but we're not quite there, and I think we all worry a lot about making sure that we don't end up going down a path where we say multiple pathways and we end up in the same old situation. The rigor has to be there in addition to the relevance. On Delia's point on national standards, I would just say it's interesting. One thing from the number of states that we've worked with over the years, what we have found is that there is an increasing amount of commonality among the states that we have worked with. So we did a report this summer that showed that 16 states that either have worked with us or have worked with our standards and done it on their own have in fact emerged with an end of high school Common Core in English and mathematics. And that leads us to believe pretty strongly that there may be a different path to standards that in fact are quite common, quite high, are college and career ready, and are in fact also internationally benchmarked, so we can be sure that we're not just comparing one state to another, but we actually have standards and then the rest of the system that look good and look favorable compared to the rest of the world. But we think that maybe the faster path to get there may be through state-led efforts, may avoid some of the fights that we've had in the past, because in fact it's happened organically on its own. So something to think about.
I agree with everything the panelists have said. I just want to add kind of one more population to the mix and a consideration. I mean, first of all, this term multiple pathways is thrown around a lot, and I think it means different things in different places and paints a different portrait in people's minds. So I think getting the standards right is definitely the fundamental starting point. It's a precondition for talking about even going down to multiple pathways. Otherwise, the danger is you're going to different standards for different kinds of kids, and we know what road that leads to. However, I think in New York City, they think in this way about multiple pathways, which is, they're trying to. In fact, a lot of our young people are taking different pathways or trying to. Some of them are very unsuccessful when they drop out of high school, and they kind of aged out. They may have some credits, maybe some of them have a varying degree of credits by the time they leave. Some of them are much older youth by the time they leave high school. And they try to drop back in. There are a lot of young people who, if you look at the stats, they go back and they take a GED program and they pass it. And then they try to go on, a surprising number, go on to post-secondary. So they want to achieve this, more education, have their education attainment be higher. But they don't have the skills. If you look at those GED, for those folks who have earned that and they go back to college, they fail at such high rates. So we need to be thinking about what are approaches. If this is happening, okay, the nirvana is you want to make sure everyone's hitting the standard by the time they get through high school, and we're building better high schools so that more young people are through there and they're college ready and they're kind of going along the path. In the meantime, we've got huge populations of young people who are already out of the system or about to drop out of the system. And we need ways, on-ramps for them back into paths that really graduate them from high school and also prepare for post-secondary experiences that have a payoff, either in a degree or credential. And those probably look much different than a traditional high school or even an early college high school, although they may have some elements of that, aspects of that approach.
I can't help but just mentioning that this is actually done across West Africa, coordinated by the West Africa Examinations Council. Obviously, we're talking about a different economy, a different political system, but it is actually done. Joel, you would also want to respond to Suzanne's question about the intermediary college high schools that she mentioned.
Sure, I'm happy to. And I would just refer everyone to the last page of this document called The Portrait in Numbers. And then the other thing I'm going to do is punt to Fidelia in a minute if she wants to, because she is the leader of an intermediary. So our role in many ways is to support those 13 intermediaries. And you'll see from the back of the page, you'll see on that first column, there are all sorts of different organizations. The best way to describe them is they were the ones who went out with the seed funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they identified promising secondary, post-secondary partnerships, folks who wanted to apply for the funds, really talked to them about what conditions they needed to get in place. They facilitate peer learning nationally because they're all talking with each other. They all have their own networks of, around anywhere from 10 to 40 schools. And so they're making sure that those schools in their network are learning from each other, but also learning from the national network that's represented, it's constituted by the 13 intermediaries in their schools. So technical assistance, policy and advocacy locally, going to districts, going to college leaders and talking about what this thing is, what kind of commitments need to be put in place, what population we're looking for, what other schools have tried and have been successful at, that sort of thing. Okay. Would you add anything at a high level?
Just a few things. One is that it was tremendously difficult. The schools that have made it to this point really had to look at themselves, had to look apropos of today's topic, had to look at the level of rigor in their classes and understand how to get there for a population of students who weren't your typical college goer. It's also worth noting that across the 13 intermediaries, there were very, very different approaches. But what we've come to today as a set of intermediaries is a common set of principles. What we found in the end was that there were a common set of principles, and we're now going back to see how we can support new schools opening up with that set of principles rather than having them go through 5 years of learning to get there.
Thank you all very much. Won't you join me in helping me to thank our panelists? And I want to thank all of you for being with us. I know we're a little bit over time, but I think you'll agree with me that the discussion was fairly important and it's gone amazingly well. So thank you again, and I ask that you continue to be on the lookout for future programs of this sort from the Campaign for High School Equity. Thank you and have a great day.